starting in just a couple of minutes. While you're waiting, please visit the website on the screen, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes, to download the handout to be able to follow along in this class. So again, we'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. Hello and welcome back to the Ferguson Library Presents Basic Microsoft Word. Thank you anybody who is joining me for this afternoon. Today we are going to be looking at Basic Microsoft Word here on YouTube from the Ferguson Library. So sorry for the little bit of a late start. I have a new setup here at the library, and I just ended up kind of having to kind of download and kind of install a whole bunch of things last minute, which I thought I was all prepared and I wasn't. My apologies. Future classes that we'll be doing will be starting on time. So while you're waiting, if you do want to follow along and participate in this class, you should have gone to the website that is right here above my head, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes, and where you'll be able to find our upcoming schedule as well as download the resources that you need to follow along in this class. And so let me just kind of show you, when you go to that website, this is what you'll find. So we're going to go here, and so this is the website, online-tech-classes. Right up here at the top of the page, we have the upcoming class schedule. You can see we'll be doing every Thursday from now until the end of March. From 2 to 4, we'll be doing a wide variety of Microsoft Office class. And then right at the end, we're going to do some little bit of video editing kind of things there too. Something a little bit of fun at the end of the sequence there. Keep tuned here. The links for these here will come up as I set them up. I didn't want to schedule them too far ahead because then it'll kind of just swarm anybody who's subscribed to the YouTube channel with all of the stuff and people will forget about it. But just remember, Thursday, 2 to 4, you can join me here at the Ferguson Library on our YouTube channel. Now, once you're here, you can keep an eye on the class schedule here. Coming down, we're going to have two different parts under here. We have the section that says Online Technology, Class Materials, and Resources. And under here, there are two different things that you'll want to pay attention to through the course of this class. Sorry, I'm just trying to adjust something on the other screen so I can keep an eye on everything that's going on here. So over here on the left, when you come to this page here, you'll see this list of all the different classes that we have done here at the Ferguson Library here on YouTube. All of these classes, there are recordings available, so you can go back into the channel history and you can find, so if you do want to kind of check out some of these courses that aren't being offered in the schedule, so things like HTML and CSS or online learning resources, you can go back and find the video and watch those there, and all the handouts and everything are available right here. So what you want to do is click the little plus sign that's next to all of these words here, and it will just kind of expand, and it'll have some of the basic information about the class, and then there'll be links to download. So the first link on this one here is our exercise handout. And so what you'll want to do is you'll want to right click on this and you'll want to do save link as. And what that'll do is that will then give you an option to go and save the file. You can see I've already downloaded it here, Introduction to Word handout. And when that's done, let me see if okay, here we go. I had to reinstall Adobe to be able to view this. So when you download that and look at it here, always, thank you. As I said, I had some last minute kind of setup things I needed to do on the computer here, including getting this set up. So once you download, you'll be able to see the handout here. This is our basic Microsoft Word handout. No, I don't want to tour. Go away. The beauty of doing this live. Fit one full page. So you can see on here, we have our first page that has some things that we'll be kind of going over here in the class, and then kind of the exercises that we'll go through as we follow along. I'll come back to this here as we start working through the different exercises. The other thing that you'll want to pay attention to here on this page here is the chat room over here on the left. Now, on YouTube here, there's two different ways that you can interact with me, the instructor, while this class is live. One of them, if you're signed into YouTube or Google, you are able to use the YouTube chat, which should be either to the side or just under this video, depending on how you have your screen set up. So you can ask me a question in there. You can say hi. I will see that and respond there. If you don't want to sign into YouTube or Google, you can come here to the Online Technology Class Materials and Resource page, and over here on the right is a little chat room. You don't have to sign in. You can just come in here and you can type the message that you want to say. Hi there, welcome to the class. So just type it in, hit enter, and then I'll see that message there and be able to answer your question. So you have two different ways that you can interact and ask me a question through the course of this class. Some other things to kind of keep in mind on YouTube as well too. What you're seeing is on a slight delay from where I'm at. So I may already be, it seems like I'm moving beyond where you have a question. Still ask your question. What I'll do is I will see the question, and if I find a good place to stop and respond to it, I will, or I'll continue on, and then I'll come back and answer your questions. Don't worry, I will try to get to any questions you have regarding basic Microsoft Word during this class. So I think those are the couple of things to kind of keep in mind here. Now kind of go over like what this class is actually going to cover. What we're looking at this class, this is basic Microsoft Word. So we're going to look at things like how to open and save and create a Microsoft Word document. So the very basic opening up Microsoft Word, creating a new document, saving it, and then opening it up again. We're going to be looking at what they call the backstage view in Microsoft Word and kind of all the different kind of things that are in that backstage view. Don't worry, it's actually a lot simpler than they actually make a term. This is just kind of the umbrella term of how they describe that there. We're going to look at how to copy and paste text into a Word document, and then we're going to look at basic text formatting and keyboard shortcuts. So one of the things I will also do is I will also take you on a tour through Microsoft Word and kind of point out kind of the different features and the things that we're going to focus on this class. So with that there, if there's any questions, please let me know. But now we'll kind of get moving on to what we'll be doing in Microsoft Word. So let me change over to let me change over to the handout so we can kind of see everything that's here. And you can now see this here. So once again, looking at the handout here in Microsoft Word, you can see here's kind of what we're going to be looking at throughout the course of this class. This class is going to cover, I say actually on the handout here, Microsoft Word 2016 or Microsoft Word 365. What you'll be seeing on my screen, what you'll be seeing here in the video is actually going to be Microsoft Word 2019. It's the latest version of the Office there. It's going to be very similar to Word 2016 or Word 365, depending on the edition that you have. Everything here should be about the same. If you have an older version of Microsoft Word, if you have 2010 or 2013, again, most of what we're going to be covering in this class is going to match with what you're able to do in your own version of Microsoft Word. So there's, but if at any point what I'm showing you doesn't seem to look the same in your Microsoft Word, please ask me in one of the chats, and then I'll kind of help you kind of guide you along to get to where you should be to kind of match with what we're doing in the class. The other thing I like to do in these YouTube classes is it is kind of a live demonstration, and I do want you to kind of help participate and kind of practice these things yourself. So I will go through and do a certain skill, and then I'll go and give you like 3 to 4 minutes, depending on how long, 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how long I think it would take to go do it yourself. Because most of you are probably watching this on your full screen here in YouTube. So then what you can do is you can kind of put that into the background and you can go practice it yourself in your own Microsoft Word. And then when I feel everybody's kind of done, is ready to kind of move on, then we'll kind of move on. You can come back to the YouTube screen and watch the video and continue watching until as I demonstrate the next exercise. So what I'll do is I'll talk, what I'll generally do is I will show the exercise, I'll walk through it, and then I'll do a quick walkthrough once more before sending you off to work on it again. So one of the things that we kind of want to take a look at here, and actually this is just kind of reference here, we'll be covering this as we kind of work here in Microsoft Word. So, with all this here, let's actually start and look at Microsoft Word and what we need to do. So when you first open up Microsoft Word 2019, Microsoft Word 365, Microsoft Word 2016, any of those there, you get greeted with a view similar to this here. And what this is this is kind of offering you you can either start with a blank document. This is in almost every case that you'll be working in Microsoft Word, you'll want to be starting off with this blank document here. But they're also doing a whole bunch of different templates and kind of tutorials that they have going through here and such. So I do highly recommend, especially if you're new to Word, if you're taking this class and you kind of want to learn more and kind of see different things that you can do in Microsoft Word, go explore some of the different templates that are available in your version of Microsoft Word. So things like they have a tour here. I'm going to do my own tour going on there and such things like creating a table of contents. This is something that gets covered actually in one of our later classes. It's not in this schedule. We're not doing advanced Microsoft Word, but after you've taken the first couple of Microsoft Word classes, if you do want to see what the advanced Microsoft Word is, there are a couple of recordings of it here on the YouTube channel. So you can kind of go back and rewatch those there and follow along with the exercises. They're all available on the online technology class website. So what we're going to do here now is we're just going to go and I'm going to open up a blank document here, and we're going to get into this is the, and I'm going to just kind of zoom in a bit so that you can all see this a little bit better on your screens. Um, you can't, unfortunately, up here, actually, I wonder, can I make this a little, I can't make this bigger. Okay, so unfortunately, I can't make the ribbon up here any larger, but I can make what's going to be showing up down in the text here a little bit larger. So it'll be easier to see on the screen. So looking at the screen here, this is kind of the meat and potatoes. This is the normal experience of working with Microsoft Word. As you're working in Microsoft Word, this is the view that you're going to get very familiar with. So right up here at the top of the window, we have the title bar up here, which is this section right up here on the top. We have the menu bar, which has these different menus or tabs. These used to be kind of drop-down menus in like you normally had in Windows, but now they've become tabs for what's known as the ribbon. So the ribbon is your tool interface that is right here up at the top. And so the ribbon started showing up in Microsoft Word actually in Microsoft Office in 2006 when they released Microsoft Office 2007. It was a major change in how people worked with Microsoft Office. So this has been around now for about 14 years. It's been around for quite a while. It was like October 2016 or 2006 when they released it. And it took people a little while to get used to. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of complaints about, oh no, we have to relearn a new way. But people got used to it, and we've kind of learned to grow and kind of accept the ribbon as being what it is. So the ribbon has a variety of different tabs. So right now you can see we start off in the Home tab right up here on the top, and then there's things like the Insert, Design, Layout, References, Mailings. And these all have their own different sets of tools and kind of features kind of in there. They're all kind of organized based on kind of what they're kind of talking about on here. For today's class, we're going to spend most of today's class here in the Home tab, looking at kind of the items here on the Home tab in the ribbon. You can change between the different tabs by clicking on their names right up here on the top. So just kind of clicking through, and you can kind of see everything down here kind of changes as we select different tabs. Now, in each tab, the ribbon itself is broken into a variety of different sections. You can see the sections are divided by these vertical lines between here. So we have things like over here, we have the clipboard section. So this is where you're able to get your copy and paste tools, copy, cut, and paste tools. And we'll be playing around a little bit with that today as we work through our exercises here in basic Microsoft Word. The next section over here is our font section. And so this is what changes the way that the text, the words that you have written in Microsoft Word, this here changes how they look and how they appear. So things like the font itself. So the font or the typeface, like what does the font actually look like? You can change that here. You have the size of the font. You can see by default, Microsoft Word is set to use the Calibri font at size 11. So this is something that's changed. I think it was Word 2013 or Word 2016. One of those there. It used to be Times New Roman size 12. So that's what most people commonly saw. But Microsoft decided they wanted to go with a different font and a different size, so they moved over to this Calibri 11. But you can always change it to your preferred font, and we'll kind of go over the fonts and how to change those there. You have more size changes down underneath here. You have your formatting look, so you have things like bold, italics, underline, strike through, and then your subscript and superscript. So these are the ones that you can add like numbers above or below, or numbers or words like above or a little bit above or below your line. So like if you're a good one is the idea of using exponents in like numbers. So when you have something like 2 squared, that little 2 that's part of the squared is what's called a superscript. And then you have things like background color and highlight and the text color over here. Moving over, we have our paragraph section here on the ribbon, and so the paragraph section deals with things like alignment. Is the text to the left of the page? Is the text to the right of the page? The spacing, the line spacing, how much space is between the different lines. You have things like borders around there, or you have numbered or bulleted lists. Those are something that gets looked at in the intermediate Word class. So don't kind of worry about these right now, but this is something that we look at. We'll be looking at next week there. And then there's a very big section here on the Home tab devoted to styles. Styles is a very important part in Microsoft Word. It's something that we're going to be looking at next week, so it's not something we're going to be covering this week here, but it is kind of a very important part of Microsoft Word. Um, and it'll be useful to know. And so that's why it takes up such a big part of this ribbon over here. And then we have kind of our find and replace over here on the right. So this is kind of a tour of the home ribbon, or the home tab of the ribbon. Moving down the page, the next thing we have down here is we have our ruler. At least I have the ruler turned on here. I can't remember if this is turned on by default or not. The ruler just basically shows you kind of the width of the page and kind of where things are marked. Don't really worry about it much just here at the beginning. As you get more comfortable and start doing kind of more complex things in Microsoft Word, it might have a different value to you at that point there. And then we have in this white space here, this is our work area. This is where the text will be as we enter it and be able to see what it looks like and how we're working on there. Most cases you could get in and you can just start typing what you need to do because that is what Microsoft Word is for. So you can just get in and kind of start typing that on there. But sometimes you may have to do some other kind of setup things for what you want to do. For today, we're just going to be just starting to type right into this blank space here. You'll notice that there is this black flashing line here, and what this is this was what known as the cursor here in Microsoft Word. The cursor indicates where the next thing that you type or whatever action that you decide to do on the ribbon will start. It's basically kind of where you are at in the document at this point. So if you type something, it will show up there. If you do like an insert, like if you want to insert a picture or something, you'll insert it where that cursor is. So the cursor is just basically an important indication of where you are as you're working in the document. And then finally, down here on the bottom, we have what's known as the status bar. So the status bar down here has a couple different things to pay attention to. You have your page count over here and your word count. So this will count the number of pages that you're working on. So if you need to write something that's 3 or 4 or 5 pages, this will let you know how many pages you're on there. Words, if you know that, okay, I need to write something that's 800 words, this will keep track of how many words that you have written. This little thing down here with the little book and the check, this is the proofing or spelling check. And so this will indicate if there's there's errors or things that you need to correct, go back and correct in your writing there. Moving over, we have the different views, whether we're in a print layout or web layout. Don't really kind of worry about these too much. They're not going to, unless you're going to be really comfortable with Microsoft Word and understand what they mean, you don't really need to know what they are. And then over here we have our zoom. And so the zoom allows us to zoom in and out. It's not zoom like the Zoom meetings. This is actually the zoom like with a camera lens in and out. The zoom here basically allows you to kind of either see all your stuff smaller or zoom in closer to see more details. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have mine here zoomed in at about 150%. Just to make everything just a little bit larger for you to see on the screen. Usually I like to work at 100% because I like to just kind of see what the real size of things are. But this will just make it kind of easier for you to kind of work on there. So just making sure I go through. Okay, so going back to the ribbon, some of the things to kind of keep track of on the ribbon is that there's several different types of buttons on the ribbon that's important to kind of pay attention to. So we're going to start over here. If we look at the paste button, you notice as I move my mouse up and down over the paste button, you notice that different parts of the paste button light up. There's the top part up here, and then there's the bottom part down here that says paste and has this little downward pointing triangle. Now what this is indicating to me is this is a two-part, it's a two-part button. The top part is, if I just click it, it will paste. It's the default version of paste. It's not going to be anything special. It's just going to copy it from someplace and dump it here without me being able to do anything special or unique to it. So that's the first step. If I click the top part of the button, that's what happens. If I click the bottom part of the button with this downward facing arrow, it opens up a menu. It opens up the paste menu. And in the paste menu, you have your different options. So Microsoft Word has some pretty basic paste options. It's not like things like Microsoft Excel, which has a little bit more complex ways of pasting stuff into Microsoft Excel. And some of these here, like Paste Special, is something that we look at kind of in a much later class, and that's something we're going to be looking at here today. But just so you know that there are these two different types of, like, there are buttons that have these two different halves to them there, and you'll see them through the ribbon at different points. Moving over, we have like the interface here. I showed you a little bit with the font. This is a drop-down menu. So what happens is I can click here, and if I click on this little triangle over on the right side next to the font name, it will open up the menu, and I'll be able to select and see the font that's on there. Now, one of the neat things about this here, and we'll see this when we start playing around with in Microsoft Word a little bit later in this class, is this is actually kind of a live preview. So as I move my mouse over these ones here and such, if I had any text over here, they would automatically change and show me what that font looks like. So you don't have to like click on something to see what it looks like. You can actually see it while you're in the menu. And we'll take a look at that. It's kind of cool. The size also has this little drop down available there. And now you'll notice also, like down here, like the bold and italics, this is another type of buttons. These are what are called toggled buttons. So what happens is they're either on or off. So like right now, bold is turned off, so it's not lit up. If I don't put my mouse over it, you can kind of see it's not lit up over here. When I click on it though, and I move my mouse away, you can now see it's actually darker. It's lit up, which means that it's on. So that indicates that anything that I type in Microsoft Word will now be in bold. Versus if I turn it off, they are not bold. So these here are toggle buttons, the bold, the italics, and the underline. And if I click on underline, you can see that lights up. But underline also has this little triangle similar to what we had here with paste. And you can see, again, it's a two-part button. Whether I'm on the left side where it's just default underline, it just puts an underline under the text. So if I do this and say underlined text, you can see it draws the line automatically underneath my text that's happening there. Or I can click the little drop-down menu and I can get different types of underlines. So I can have it be a double line, I can have it be a solid bold line, etc. Moving over, we have some toggle buttons, we have some more menu buttons. And then, actually, I'm trying to make sure I've gotten all the different types of buttons. I think I've gotten all the different types of buttons. So again, you just gotta make sure that when you're working on the ribbon, if you're trying to do something, be aware that there are these different types of buttons, and they'll have different kind of actions or expanded actions from what you're normally able to do. The other thing on the ribbon that is key to pay attention to is if you look at the bottom right of each of these sections, there's a little icon. It's like a I wish I could actually like draw it better, but I wonder, actually, can I? I'm not sure how well this would show up. Not very well. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you look at it on yours, it's kind of like a box with kind of an arrow pointing out of the bottom right corner of the box. And what this indicates actually is this indicates that there are expanded settings. So what we see here in the ribbon are just the basic, most commonly used settings. But you can actually have more complex settings. So if I click on the one here on font, this will open up the font settings box, which gives me, this is old fashioned. This is all the way back from the earliest versions of Microsoft Word. This is how you were able to control fonts beyond what was just in your interface up here. And so in here we're able to do you're able to choose which font you have. You're able to choose italic or bold, the size over here. You can do things like colors. If we go here to advanced, there's like spacing. There's a bunch of different kind of things you can do to adjust your font in there. If I cancel this here, you can see we have one here for paragraph. And one of the things I always kind of recommend, because people always get confused by this here, is in Microsoft Word, you want to come down here where it says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. If you turn that off, it won't add in extra spaces when you hit the Enter key. So I do kind of recommend, that's kind of a useful thing to do. So I've spent kind of a few minutes kind of going over the ribbon and the basic interface here in Microsoft Word. Are there any questions? I'll give kind of a couple minutes or a couple seconds for you to catch up to where I'm at. Feel free to ask any questions, and then we'll kind of move on. We're going to take a quick look at the backstage view, and then we're going to get to actually working in Microsoft Word, entering text and working with the text that we enter in Microsoft Word. So give a few seconds to see if there's any questions, and then I will continue. All right, so I see there aren't any questions right now, so let's move on to our next section, which is taking a look at the backstage view here in Microsoft Word. Also, if you notice me as I'm watching, if you notice me kind of looking over to the side of the screen like I am, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on your chat. I have that over on a different screen, just so I'm kind of keeping an eye on to see what's going on. And I'm also just keeping an eye on making sure that my stream is and everything's running properly there. So it's not that I'm not paying attention to you. I am paying attention to you, just in a different direction. Okay, so the backstage view here in Microsoft Word, we access this by, so once you have a Microsoft Word document open, and you can tell right now this is a document that's open right up here at the very top on the title bar. It says document 1, which indicates to me also that this has not been a saved file yet. This is a brand new file. There hasn't been saved to the hard drive yet. So I come up here, I'm going to click on the File tab. So you can see right next to the Home tab, there is a File tab. Instead of acting like the other tabs on the ribbon does, when I click File, you can see it takes over the entire screen and brings me into what's known as the Backstage view. So the Backstage view provides you a lot of different options and information about the Microsoft Word document that you're working with. So the first thing we get here is our info page. And so what this does is this will tell us things like the properties, like how big it is, how many words, how many pages it is, how many words it is. You can see right now I can't tell the size because I haven't saved it yet. There's no space on the hard drive. It hasn't taken up any space there yet. You can do document protection over here. You can do check for issues. Again, if it's not, unless you're really familiar with what this is doing, don't worry about this kind of thing. But these are just kind of where you would find these kind of capabilities here. Down here, it will tell you like who the author of the document is. You can add an author. You can kind of do all these different kind of things on there. But over here on the left is actually the key that we want to pay attention to. So you can see right now we're up at the info section right down there. But now we can move down. If we go down to like the new section, we get something very similar to the opening screen that we got when we first opened up Microsoft Word. And so this is where we're able to create a new document. So if you're sitting there working on a Word document, and all of a sudden you realize, oh wait, I need to do something new, you can actually come here and you can kind of open up a new blank document and start working on that one there. Your old document, the one that you're working on, will still be open in the background. This just allows you to start working in a new document without affecting your old one. Moving down, we have our open, where you can use to open a file, a Word file that you've been working on before. So if you needed to, say, copy and paste something from an earlier document that you were working on, you can come here to open, and then you'll be able to open it up, and then you'll be able to copy it and then come back here and paste it there. Coming down, and then we have our save. And if you notice, when I click on save here, I click on the save here and such, it automatically jumps down to save as. So if I come back here to info and I go and click on save. So my mouse is over save. When I click on it, you can see that save as has lit up. And the reason for that there is that I haven't saved this document yet. So whenever you save a new document, you're always put into save as. The difference between save and save as is that save will save the file where you already have it. So it's a document that you've already been working on, you've already saved it. It has a home on your computer, on your hard drive, whether it be in documents or on the desktop, wherever you decided to save it. It has a home, that's where the file lives, and when you save it, it automatically just updates that saved file. If you've deleted stuff and you save it, it will delete it in that save file. If you've added stuff, it will add it to that save file, etc. Save as gives you the option of choosing where you're going to save a file, what name you're going to give it to, and what name you're going to give it. So since we have not saved this file yet, it does not have a home on the hard drive. It does not have a name yet. Obviously, we need to give those there. So it takes us to save as. So what happens is now in save as, we can then choose like a location. And what happens is that since 2016 and above, they've kind of added this little kind of fancy save as option because they wanted to they integrate more with OneDrive. This PC means it will go someplace on the computer. I'm old fashioned. I've been doing this stuff for over 20 years now. And so what happens is I always tend to kind of automatically come down to this browse option because this gives me, when I click on this here, this gives me the save option that I am most familiar with. And probably most of you are probably also familiar with this. So when I click save at, when I click the browse, it opens up my Windows file kind of browser box here, the typical thing we have. And so I can go say to documents. Actually, let's go to desktop. I'm going to just save this on the desktop, and we're going to call this basic word class. So now what happens is I've chosen a location, a save location, the desktop on my computer, and I've given it a name. And I can see right down here, there's an option for save as type. And by default, it's set as Word document .docx. Now, Microsoft Word from Word 2007 onward saves its files as this .docx file. So that's if you ever get a file that's .docx, it's from Microsoft Word 2007 or later. Prior to 2007, in Office 2003 and before, it saved files as .doc files. You can open up .doc files in any later version of Word. You can't necessarily open up docx files in older versions of Word. So if you have somebody's using a really old version of Word, they're using Word 2003, they will definitely not be able to open up the files that you create today in like Word 2019 or Word 2016. But if you go through like your old files and you have something that was made on an earlier version of Word, you'll be able to open it here. So that's just kind of what those different kind of things mean. And you can actually you can change the file type depending on what you need to do. So you can save it as a text file, you can save it as a PDF. These are some things that we look at actually in it's actually in the advanced Microsoft Word class. So again, if you're interested in kind of following those along, after you've taken the intermediate class, go back and find a couple of recordings of advanced Microsoft Word that I've done here on the Ferguson Library YouTube channel, and you can watch those and kind of follow along and learn that kind of thing there. So getting back to the basics, I've chosen a location and I've given it a name. I don't have to type .docx. It's automatically going to add this to the end. So I can just type in basic word class, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to click the save button on there. And now you'll notice right up here at the top on my toolbar, right up here at the very top, instead of it saying document 1, it now says basic word class .dock. So that is, we have saved the file. Now, if I come back here to File and come down to Save, you can see it comes back to here, and what it did was it saved the changes. It doesn't need to ask me because I'm basically, when I hit Save, I'm telling it, save it to that same location with that same file name. Now, what happens if I go and I make like a whole bunch of changes here in Microsoft Word? So I go in and I type in a bunch of text. I'm typing in a bunch of text. And now I want to save this, but I don't want to. I don't want to save it over my basic word class file, the file that I had before. What happens if I want to keep that one the way it is, and I want to save my changes as a new file? And this is where Save As comes in play again. So I come up here to File, Save As, and once again I can now choose a new location, and I can give it another file name. So we're going to call this basic word class 2 and click save. And now what happens is now I have two different files. If I go show you my desktop here, let me just kind of minimize and I can show you my desktop here. You can see I have basic word class 2 and I have basic word class. There's my two files right there. So that's basically the difference between save and save as. So we're going to close this. We're going to go back to our basic word class. So yeah, so that ends it. Let's go back to the backstage view and kind of see what else we have here. So also in the backstage view, we have the our print options. So when we go to print, we can choose what printer it's going to. This computer actually doesn't have any printers installed, so I don't really have a printer choice. You get a preview of your document over here and what it will look like when it goes out to the page. So this is the size of the page that it's printing to, and you'd be able to see the text on all of this here. able to choose which pages you want to print, whether it's going to print double-sided, etc., portrait or landscape. You can see I can do it sideways. And so you're able to do your print options and do print up there. So in the backstage view is also where print is available. And then you have things like your share and export options here too. So ways that you're able to send the file out, whether it's by email or to share it by social media or however you want to share it in the cloud, etc. How the file gets shared. And then close just closes the file. So that is the backstage view. Once again, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Let me know if there are any questions in either the chats, either in the YouTube chat or in the chat on online-tech-classes. I do see both of them, so you can ask either way, and then we will get on to actually start working on entering and selecting how to actually start entering text and working with it in Microsoft Word. And actually, just 1 second, while you're if there's any questions, I'm going to just, no, actually, no, I won't be right back. I'm fine. So I'm not seeing any questions. Let me just give it a couple more minutes because, again, you're on a little bit of delay for me. All right, so it looks good. So now we have been doing this for about 45 minutes, about 40 minutes right now. And so now we need to actually let's actually get in and start working with Microsoft Word. We have a sense of what's around Microsoft Word, how to get around it, and where the different tools are. But now we need to actually figure out how to get the text in there and start using those tools. So as I mentioned before, when you're in Microsoft Word, if you just click anywhere in the white space here, boom, you're going to get this you're going to get this little flashing line here, which is called the cursor. The cursor, as I mentioned at the beginning, indicates when you start typing or you do any sort of actions or something, it's going to happen where that cursor is. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to go take a look at my exercises that I have written for the class. So let's pull this up so we can kind of see where we're at. We're moving over to page 2 on our exercise document here. So we've opened a new Word document. We've done that step there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to type this sentence into our top line. We're going to type the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. So let me go over here. Let me actually close this. Close. Okay, so the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And I'm just typing by hitting the keys on my keyboard there, and each letter that I hit shows up on the screen right here. And you can see as I went along, it moved from left to right, and the cursor, the flashing cursor, indicates where each of my different characters go. So now that we've typed a sentence in our Microsoft Word document, we're now going to save it. And so there's a couple different ways to save. I've shown you through the backstage view. Come here to File, Save. I'm now saving it to the desk. I saved it to the desktop as basic Word class, and now whatever changes I made, it's now saved onto there. But there are a couple other different ways that you can save, which might save you a little bit of time, and it's useful to know these things. And also, saving your document should become something that's automatic. It should be something that you should do. It should become your muscle memory. So the more you do it, the more you'll remember to do it. Because you don't want to go and work for 2 to 3 hours on a Word document, all of a sudden to have a power outage or have your computer crash or have Word crash, and to lose all that work. So by saving frequently, the worst that you'll lose is like 5 to 10 minutes of work or 20 minutes, depending on such, rather than hours of work. Granted, Word has better recovery options now, so sometimes when something crashes or goes away, you can open up. You're not going to lose as much work if you didn't save, but it's always best to be safe and sure. So the other option is if we look up the very, very top left of the window, right up here, you can see there's this little diskette icon. And when I put my mouse over it, you can see it gives me a little tooltip that says Save, and then in parentheses it says Control S. So this gives us actually two pieces of information. First, by clicking on this button, boop, it saves the Word document. So instead of having to go to File, Save, I can just click this, boop, and it's saved. Let me see. Okay, it doesn't. Additionally, when I have my mouse over it, you can see in parentheses it says Control S. And now this is what's known as a keyboard shortcut. And keyboard shortcuts are a really great tool to learn to make your job easier, to start learning muscle memory, and to do things that you do frequently, to get to do them easier. So Control S, the way I do that there is I hold down the Control key on my keyboard. The Control key is usually down at the bottom left of your keyboard. So if you look down at the bottom of your keyboard, you have the space bar, and then you look to the left of it, you'll see an Alt key, a Windows key. If you're on a laptop, you might see an FN key, but then at the very left, at the very corner there, you'll see a CTRL or Control button key. And so what you'll do is you'll hold that down, and then you'll hit the S button. And what that will do, and then you can let go of the control key. And what that'll do is that will save your file. And so it becomes really automatic as you're sitting there and you're typing away at the keyboard. Just hit Control S and then continue typing. Practice that, get used to that, put that into your muscle memory so that you're constantly always saving the file as you're working. You sit there and you get to the end of something and you kind of sit back into your chair and you're kind of taking a breath. It's like, okay, then hit Control S, and then it just make that your automatic kind of process. Control S, the keyboard shortcut, just makes it a little bit easier to save a file than having to go click on this little tiny icon, or click on the file and then click save. It's just easier to hit Control S. It automatically works, and Control S will also take you to save as. So if it's the first time that you're saving a file, it will then allow you to choose where it's going to get saved and the file name and everything there too. Okay, so the next thing that we need to look at here, actually, so let me give you about 2 minutes. Go into your Microsoft Word document if you haven't already, and you're going to type in the line, "The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog," and then save your file. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes for this, and then we'll continue and we'll start looking at kind of some of the different other skills to work in Microsoft Word. So with that, I will be right back. If you have any questions, this is a good time to drop them in the chat, and I'll get to them when I get back. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry, I just needed to go get a drink of water so that I am not parched. Getting this back into where it should be. I don't see any questions. So with that, let us continue in and look at some of the other skills. The next thing that we're going to look at is how to highlight text that you have in Microsoft Word. Now, highlighting is a really important skill when it comes to Microsoft Word because it's what allows you to do changes like things like fonts and size and formatting. Being able to highlight the text to basically select which text that you want to affect is a really crucial skill. And so there's a couple different ways that you can highlight text. The most straightforward way that you can highlight text in Microsoft Word is by using your mouse, and what you do is you click. You can either start from the right or you can start from the left. We're going to start over here on the left side. I'm going to click and I'm going to hold down the left mouse button. And I'm going to then move the mouse right over the text. And as you can see, as I'm moving the mouse, as I'm dragging the mouse over this here while holding down the left mouse button, it is selecting it. You're seeing this gray bar going up around the text. And so now I have selected this whole sentence here. And now what happens is this now allows me to do things like make the whole thing bold after I've typed it in already, make it italicized. I can change the font as I want to. I can change the size as I want to. And it will only affect the text that I've written there. If I have any other text on here, changing the font or the size or making it bold won't affect anything. It will only affect what I've typed so far. So, so that's what highlighting allows you to do. Is it allows you to select the text that you're going to affect when you start doing like different processing or editing options on your Microsoft Word. So that's the way to, and then you can click anywhere on the page. So if I click down here and such, you can see now it removes the highlighting. So you can see if I do just one word, if I just choose quick and I do bold, now only quick is bold, the rest of the sentence is still normal. So highlighting allows you to really pinpoint or specify what sort of changes or edits that you want to do to your text. And once again, just click anywhere in the white space around to clear the highlight from what you have there. And now you can see if I click bold or italicize, hold on a second, there's somebody here knocking. Sorry about that. I had an interruption in the room that I was in. So we should be, where was I? Okay, so you click anywhere in the white space to clear the highlight that you've selected on your text, and then you can continue typing like you normally do into your Word document. The other way to do a highlight that allows you to be a little bit more precise. Sometimes clicking and dragging can be a little bit difficult to get precisely what you need to get, or if you have a little bit of difficulty using the mouse, if you have difficulty holding down the mouse button for extended periods of time. The other way is if I click at the start, like where I want to start highlighting. So if I want to start highlighting at the beginning of the sentence here, and now, just like remember before when we looked at the keyboard shortcut for save, we held down the control key and hit S to save. Here, if we hold down the shift key, so if you look at the shift key over on your left side of your keyboard, hold down the shift key, and then using the arrow keys over on the right side of the keyboard, start moving the cursor with the arrow key to the right, and you can see now I'm getting the highlight moving across the my sentence on here. And if I hit down, it will take me to the end of the line, because if I have another line under here, it would actually move the cursor down to that next line. But since the end of the line is the end there, it just jumps it to the end. So then this allows you to precisely select what you need to do if you have difficulty using the mouse. It's also convenient to use this here if you're trying to do it on just like a quick, like a couple of words, and you don't want to pick your hands up from the keyboard and go over to the mouse. So once it's selected, I can then make it bold or underlined, etc. there. So that is text highlighting. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat, and we're going to kind of be moving on, and we're going to be looking at copy and paste next. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, so let's take a look at copy and paste. So in order to copy and paste in Microsoft Word, you have to start by selecting or highlighting the text that you want to copy and paste. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to do the whole sentence that we have here. So I'm going to select and highlight my whole sentence. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. And I'm going to come up here, and you can see now up here, actually, this is a good demonstration of something too. So if I click, I'm clearing my highlight over here. Let's look up here in this clipboard section, up in the top left section up here. And you can notice that the cut and copy buttons are grayed out. Now, the reason for that there is that because there is no text highlighted, there's no way that that action can be done. There's nothing to copy, there's nothing to cut. So it's what they call, these are what's called context sensitive buttons. They'll only light up when there's something available for it to act on. So if I go and highlight the sentence, bloop, you now see they're lit up and they're active. I can now do something on there. So what is the difference between copy and cut? So what they'll do is they both work with paste. You can copy something and then paste it somewhere else, or you can cut something and paste it somewhere else. The difference is that copy will make a copy, so your original. So if I did a copy of the sentence and pasted it down below, both of those will be available. If I do a cut, it will put a copy of the line into the new place, and then it will erase the original. So cut is really good for moving things from one place to another. Copy is good for adding like multiple versions of something, and copy is useful for things like if you have something that's like mostly the same. Suppose you're doing like apples 1, apples 2, apples 3, apples 4. You can copy apples 1, paste it, and then just change 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of having to type apples each time. Stupid example, but that's just kind of an example that we need to do. So what we're going to do in this situation here is we're going to copy this. I'm going to click the copy button, boop, and now you notice there really isn't any other change. I just happen to know in my mind that this is now sitting on what Microsoft calls the clipboard. You can see they actually call it the clipboard right over here. So the clipboard is just basically a storage space in Microsoft Windows where something that gets copied sits until it's pasted. And so it's just like a temporary location. If I copy something else, you can only have generally one thing copied to the clipboard at a time. There are systems out there that have made it so that you can copy multiple things and have them saved there, but for the most part, it's just easy to remember. If you have something copied, it goes to the clipboard. If you copy something before you paste that first copy, you'll lose that first copy. So you can have things copied one at a time, and it'll be there until you paste it. So now that I've copied this, it's sitting in the clipboard. I know it's sitting in the clipboard. I'm going to hit enter, go down to a new line. So the enter key on my keyboard does what's called a carriage return. So it takes it from the end of the line and goes down to the end. This will also, it's different than letting the text run to the end of the line. When I get to the end of the margin, it will automatically go down to the next line, but it won't be the enter actually specifically puts in a character. It actually says that this is a new line. So it's important to know the difference between having something that runs off the edge and that comes down to starts over on the left and having enter. Now that I've come down to new line, I'm going to come up and I'm going to click the paste button. Remember, the paste button is a two-part button. There's the lower part and there's the top part. So I'm going to click the top part of the button, which is the default paste, and you can see now it's now dropped a copy of the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. That has now been copied there. If I wanted to, I can keep pasting it. Because it's sitting in the clipboard, I can paste it as many times as I want. So it's a really easy way to make multiple copies of what you're looking through as you go down. And then what happens is you can also copy multiple lines. So if I select, say, these top 3 lines, I can copy this, and I come down here, and when I paste it, it will paste 3 lines at a time. So it's a really great way to really start expanding things exponentially. You copy 1, you get a second one, you copy those 2, then you get 4, do those 4, you can get 8, and you can expand it really, really quickly. And now, so then what happens is, as I mentioned, there's several ways of selecting things in Microsoft Word. One of the things we could do is another useful keyboard shortcut is if I hit Control A. So Control A, hold down the Control key and hit A. Oops, hold on. Come on. Control A. Control A is what's called Select All. And what it'll do is it'll select every bit of text in your Word document all at the same time. So if this thing was 100 pages long and I did Control A, everything on those 100 pages would get selected. Now that I have everything highlighted with a really simple Control A, I can hit copy again. Now if I come down here and click paste, it will then paste the entire, like it'll basically double what I just had there before. So it's a really easy way to kind of select everything and copy it at the same time. So that is a copy and paste. And so now we have a whole bunch of different lines here that we can kind of play with on our page of the same sentence and kind of see what different kind of formatting there is. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Go and copy and paste your line on your Word document a couple of times. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. And then we'll get moving on. We'll look at what happens when you make a mistake or you want to delete a line. We'll look at the different ways of actually erasing what you have in your Word document. So yeah, just a couple of minutes and then we'll be moving on. All right, so I don't see any questions. So let's continue moving on. So now we're going to look at how to delete or erase what you've already written in your Word document in case you make a mistake or you just want to erase something that's there any longer or kind of move on to and put something different in that place there. So there are two different ways that you can delete or erase text in Microsoft Word. One of them, the most common way that most people will use, is the backspace key. So if you look at your keyboard up in the top right of where the letter section is, some keyboards have like a numeric keypad over on the right hand side. We want to actually look at the section that has all the letters, the wider section. Up in the top left of that there is a key that says backspace. It might say BKSPC or it might say backspace. But what it is, it's in the top, and usually will have a leftward pointing arrow on it as well too. So the backspace, what it does is, let's go and look at my cursor. I'm going to put my cursor here onto this line here. So you can see my cursor is sitting over here. Actually, I'm going to put my cursor into the middle of the line. So my cursor is right here in the middle of the line. And so what backspace will do is backspace will erase anything that's to the left, that leftward pointing arrow, anything to the left of the cursor. Remember, the cursor is the point that tells you whatever action is going to happen at that point there. So if I hit it once, you'll notice now that it erased the M that was to the left of my cursor. If I hit it again, it will now erase the U that was to the left of that. Hit it again, it'll erase the J. Hit it one more time and it'll erase the space. So remember, the spaces also count as characters. They'll in your text. They'll get erased. They're not. There actually is a, in the background of Microsoft Word, there's actually a character there that's telling you, okay, this is a space. It exists in Microsoft Word's memory. So when you backspace over that space, it will erase that kind of sense that there's a space there. So backspace will erase anything to the left of the cursor. Now, if you also look on your keyboard, and this might be on a different place on different keyboards, it's usually in like a little section of 6 keys. They'll have things like, we'll say like home and insert, and then page down, page up, end, END, and then there'll also be a DEL or delete key. So the DEL or delete key, delete, does pretty much the same thing that backspace does, but instead of deleting to the left of the cursor, it will delete to the right of the cursor. So you can see right now where my cursor is, it's right between the X and the P in my edited sentence here. If I hit delete, it deleted the P. So it deleted what was to the right of the cursor. So my cursor was here, it deleted the P right on that side there. Hit it again, it'll delete the X. Hit it one more time, it'll delete the D. Hit it one more time, and it'll delete the space. So once again, so it works. So delete and backspace work the same, just in different directions. It's just a matter of choosing which one you're comfortable with. If you end up being comfortable using them both, you end up using them in kind of different situations, depending on what works for you at that time. Most people end up choosing one and working with that. So if you find you're more comfortable and more familiar using backspace, you can just use the backspace and delete things going from right to left. If you find yourself more comfortable using delete, you can then use delete and delete things going from left to right. So that is the what backspace and delete do. That's a way of erasing text. Now, what happens if you accidentally erase text that you didn't mean to in Microsoft Word? Now, you can also erase. If I go and highlight a whole section here and then say hit backspace, I can erase actually whole words, whole sections, whole paragraphs, whole pages if I wanted to. I could hit Control A and select everything and hit backspace and it'll erase everything. So remember, if you do Control A to select everything, be careful what you hit. So what happens is here, I just deleted that whole section there demonstrating to you. What happens if I realize, oh, I didn't want to do that. That was a mistake. Don't worry. Don't panic. There might be a way to get out of this. So if we go look at the very top of our window again, remember where we were looking at that little save icon on the top left? Well, right next to it is we have this little loopy left arrow. And what that loopy left arrow is that is our undo command. So undo does pretty much what it says. It undoes what you just did in Microsoft Word. So if I click this once, boop, you can now see what I had selected and just erased is now back in place. It brought it back. And you notice this is still lit up. So if I hit it again, boop, you can actually see now if I keep hitting it, you can see it keeps undoing step by step what I did. Let's go back to here. And it'll go back. Depending on its memory, it'll go back to the beginning of when you opened up and started working on that document. So if you're working on if you just started working with a fresh blank document, you could go all the way back. You could undo all the way back to the very start of that blank document. Now, if it's a document that you've worked on, you've saved it, you've closed it, and you open it up again, and you start doing something, it will only undo what you've done in that session so far. So you can't go all the way back to the beginning of the document, but you can undo what you did until you opened up the document. Again. So that is the undo command. So it's another really useful one to remember. And it's also useful to remember its keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut for undo is Control Z. So if you hold down the Control key on your keyboard and hit the Z button, it will do undo, which is, again, another really great shortcut to kind of get into your muscle memory, so that you have to learn not to panic when something happens in Microsoft Word. You can always kind of generally at this point you can recover from a lot of different mistakes that happen in Microsoft Word. So when something happens, make it become automatic that you go and hit Control Z to undo something that you did. Because again, if you realize that you didn't want to undo it, you can always redo it. You can notice right up here, right next to the undo button, is a loopy right arrow that is called redo. And what that will do is that will step forward for the different things that you've undone. So it's like there's like a queue of actions that you've done, and you can move back or forth on that queue of actions. Now, if I go and make a change here, You'll notice now that I no longer have undo. In fact, it says repeat typing, which is kind of odd. But I can no longer redo things because I've broken the queue. I've broken the chain of its memory of what I've done. So that is undo, and that is also delete and backspace. Let me know if you have any questions, and we will move on to starting to play around with the different formatting that we can do with these different sentences here. We have about 45 minutes left, and we have just a few more things that we want to do. We're going to look at kind of different ways to kind of format um, things here in our Word document there. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions. Give it a little bit of time because you are on a delay. All right, looks good. Let me go over here. Excellent. Okay, so now now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at kind of how to do different formattings, basic text formatting here in Microsoft Word. So in order to do text formatting for stuff that you've already written in Microsoft Word, it always starts with selecting or highlighting the text that you want to format. So I'm going to just choose one of my random sentences here in my document. I'm going to choose the quick brown fox tripped over the lazy dog. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this bold. I'm going to come up and I'm going to click the B button on my my ribbon up here under the font section. There's a B button. When I put my mouse over it, you can see it says bold. Make your text bold, and also has in parentheses what we've gotten familiar with. It says Control B. So we know now that the keyboard shortcut for bold is Control B. So I'm going to hit that, and now you can see it's made just that sentence that I selected bold. And I can do that to different sentences. So I can choose this one here, and I can do bold and make that one bold. I can make this one bold. Now I can also do my keyboard shortcut. So if I select this here and I hold on my control key and hit the B button on my keyboard, I can also make it bold. So you can either use the tool on the ribbon or you can use your keyboard shortcut. So you can also do this with the other basic forms of formatting in Microsoft Word, italics and underline. So what you do is, again, you select the text that you want to edit and then hit the I button to italicize it. Over here, hit the I button to italicize it. Or I can hit, if I put my mouse over it, you can see it tells me that Control I is the keyboard shortcut. So I can go over and I can hit, oops, we just want one line, Control I, and it will highlight that, it will italicize that. We also have underline. So underline will draw a line under the text. So I can select it, draw a line under it, over here, draw a line under it, and I can also use Control U. So take a couple of minutes, go back to your Word document, and take some of those lines that you have there and highlight and make them bold, make them italicized, make them underlined. Do a couple of them for each. Practice with the keyboard shortcuts if you want. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes for that. All right, so I hope you've been able to practice that, making things bold, italics, and underlined, kind of trying out the different formattings. Now we're going to do something very similar. Instead of changing how the or changing like the making it bold, italicized, instead of changing the emphasis of the text or how the text gets accented, we're going to look at changing the font. So right now, as I mentioned, the font that by default shows up in Microsoft Word is the Calibri font at size 11. But you can also set it to any font that you have installed on your computer. Once again, just like before, the process is to highlight the text that you want, and we're going to come up here to the font box, and we're going to click the drop down where it says Calibri body. It might just say Calibri on yours, or it might say a different name here depending on what your settings are on there. But whatever, we're going to click the little drop down next to it, and we're going to get a list of all the different fonts that we have available. Now remember at the beginning when I was taking us on the tour of Word, I pointed out that this kind of does like a live demonstration. So when I put my mouse over this here and such, you can kind of see my text over there changing to the font that I'm selecting. So I can go down and I can choose any of these fonts that I want to do. So you know what, let's find something like this here. This here's kind of fun. Actually, let's do something that stays on the same page, same line. Let's find something fun. Okay, how about handwriting? So we'll choose like the handwriting, something that looks a little different than everything else it is. So I went down and choose Lucida handwriting. You can choose whatever font that you want to kind of change it to. I'm just going to click on it. And now you can see I've changed the font. It looks different than all the other fonts that are available on the page. So if I come down here and highlight this one here, I can then have this set be a different font. Let's make it Old English. And then I can also make it bold, italicized, underlined while I have it selected. You can do all of those to almost any of the fonts that are out there. I can also change the sizes. We can see here this Old English font here. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit harder to read. If I wanted to, I can make it bigger. So I can come up here and I can choose by choosing the number, the menu for the number that's next to the font name. I can choose the font size. And so if I make this like size 20, it now makes it larger and a little bit easier to read. I can make it smaller if I wanted to. I can make it down to 8 and it makes it smaller. So you can use that to change the size of the text. If you're trying to make certain text stand out from other text, you can make it larger, you can make it bold. You can change the font. So those are all different ways that you can change how the text actually looks on your page. Right next to the number here are these two other like buttons here. This is a size up and a size down. This is often convenient to be able, instead of having to click and do a choose like whatever size here and such, you can go up or down till you find the size that you want, that you actually want for your document there. So like if I go to 24, that's good. If I go to 25, it takes it down to a new line. I don't really want to do that there, so I'm going to click back down to size 24 and I'm going to have my full size on there. So that is the fonts. Okay, so yeah, so go and take about a minute, go back to your Microsoft Word document and change the font of a couple of different lines. Choose whatever fonts that you want. If you have questions, please ask them in either the YouTube chat or the chat on the Online Tech Pages website. I'm muted. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so let us move on to kind of the last couple of skills that we have in place here. So we've looked at how to enter text, how to copy and paste text, how to change the size of the text, how to change the font, how to do things like bold, italics, underline. Some of the other ways that you can edit or modify your text and how it looks on the page is what's known as justification. Justification is what determines whether the text shows up where the text lines up on your page. So by default, when you first open up Microsoft Word, if you don't make any changes to the settings, you don't make any changes to the styles, by default, your text is going to be what's known as left aligned or left justified. And what that means is if we look at the left side of our document over here, you can see doesn't matter whether they're different fonts, whether it's bold, whether it's underlined, whether it's italics, the left edge, you could basically take like a ruler and hold it up to that edge there and such, and it will be a straight lined up edge along that left edge. Which basically it's what is the left justified means is that the text is pressed up against this left side wall during this time here. Um, but you don't necessarily have to always have your text lined up on the left side on there and such. Sometimes you want to have text that, and so what happens is also left justified text starts the cursor on the left side and moves the cursor. So it starts on the left side and moves the cursor in the text to the right. Now, if I wanted to, I can make a line. I'm going to highlight a line, and I'm going to come up here, and you can see we actually have 4 different buttons right here in the paragraph section. These are our justification buttons. We have left justification, we have center, we have right justification, and then we have justify. And justify, I'll explain this one here in a little bit later, but the 3 that we're looking at right now is we're going to look at left, center, and right. So if I click on right, you can see now is it takes my line here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do it for several lines just so we can kind of see how it looks here. So now what I've done is I've taken several lines and I've made them right justified. So just like with the left justified lines everything up against a wall on the left side of the text. Everything's lined up like a ruler straight wall right over there. Right justified does the same thing on the right side. So you can see right along here, again, I could probably put a ruler right along here, and this will all be right on the right side of the margin. These will all be lined up there. And then you can see as they come over, you can see the left sides are now a little ragged because I have things that the italicized and the bold make things different widths. Everything's not a fixed width in Microsoft Word, depending on the font that I have or the like if I make this one here right justified, you can see this here ends much further to the left than these do because it's bigger and the font it uses takes up more space. So those, and then what happens is if I choose something, let's choose a couple of lines here, and let's make these with the center one. The center one is center justified. And so what center justified does, instead of having that wall on the left, that wall on the right, is it starts the cursor in the middle, and as you start typing, it expands evenly left and right. So actually, what happens when I start typing something that is center justified? So you can see if I come down here to a new line, it puts the cursor into the middle of the page. It's like in the exact center of my page. And now I'm going to start typing, this is center aligned text. And you can kind of see while I'm still writing left to right, the text is kind of moving out and it's keeping the center of the sentence that I have in the center of the page. So center align, what it does is it takes, so let's actually take these ones here that let's take these up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just, I'm going to do a little, actually, let's do this one up here. This one up here. Let's grab this one here because we'll have something that's we have 3 lines that are a bit different on all of these here. And we're going to center justify. And so now you can see, even though they say the same thing, they all kind of have like a little bit raggedy edges on both the left and the right because they have different sizes based on the font size, and whether this one here is bolded. Bold makes things just a little bit wider. But they'll all be like if I draw a line down the center, it'll be equal on both sides of how long that sentence is. So that's what the center justify does. Now the fourth one, there's this fourth one that's justify. Now if I do this on the text that I have right now, we're not going to really see a difference. What the justify will do, in fact, actually what I should do, let me actually show you something here. You're not going to have to follow along for this here, but I just want to show you actually what, hold on. Come on. No, I just want you to, okay, so now I have things that are going onto the Nook. So now if I take, actually this is not right. You know what I'm gonna do? Let's make these guys. Okay, there we go. So yeah, and if I do this, you'll notice it doesn't really change that much. But if I start typing here, come on, there we go. Oh, hold on, okay. I'm messing things up here, but I just want to demonstrate what this will do. I keep messing that up. Doesn't really matter. Okay. All right. So what the center justify will do is it will attempt to make both the left side and the right side lined up. Like it will try to make them like squared up. And what it may end up leading into is you may end up having like words that end up getting stretched out or like large spaces between. If I end up using like a really long word, uh, really long, oops, really long word here. As you can see, as I'm typing, it's keeping. I keep trying to point at my screen here. It's keeping the edges here somewhat squared. Word here that I am typing. And you can see it's keeping these edges squared up. Instead of having kind of the raggedy edges that we're seeing there, it's keeping them squared. And that's what the center justified does. Is it tries to keep the left and right edges squared. Where you see this most often is you see it like in newspapers or even in books actually. If you go and open up a book that's sitting near to you, you'll see that the right and left edges for paragraphs that go onto the new page, they have like sharp edges on the left or right. You go look at a newspaper, the columns are full justified. That means that they take up the full space inside the column space that they have, but it leads to sometimes some weird formatting things. Like if you have like a really long word, it may put in like an extra space. Like if I go in and what happens if I start? Okay, here we go. Here's because I'm doing this here. You see, as I'm adding space, you can see it's kind of squeezing the spaces over here. Now all of a sudden, now I have this really long. See if we can get this to kind of go down to. At some point, it keeps compressing this here. There we go. And now all of a sudden now that jumped over, and you can see now the spaces that I have between these words here are really odd. But what it's doing is it's trying to make that kind of really nice, neat left and right edges. So my recommendation though is unless you're really looking for that look, don't really worry about the full justification. Leave it to left and right or center for your most basic needs until you get kind of to a need where you do need to have that kind of really specific look to the left and the right. So that is justification. Any questions on that? So yeah, go take a couple of minutes and go in and kind of play around with making some of your sentences left and right justified and center justified. Don't worry about the full justification because it's the way that we have these sentences set up, you're not going to really see the difference with those there. But play around with the left and the right. Take about 2 minutes to do that. And if you have any questions, ask them in the chat. I'm muted again. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions coming up in the chat, so let's go and take a look at kind of some of our last couple of skills that we're going to look at. So I'm going to do kind of an omnibus kind of thing here of kind of looking. We have about 3 more things that I have on my handout of things to work through. We're going to do that. I'll give you some time to do it, and then I'll leave some room for questions and talk about what's coming up on our schedule now. So one thing that we're going to look at now is we're going to look at changing the color and highlight. Everything that we've done so far on our Word document here has just been black and white. Black and white's fine. That's what most of us work in when we're working with all of this stuff over the years. But sometimes it's fun to do a little bit of color, especially if you're looking at using Microsoft Word for something that's a little bit more playful or more fun. So let's go in and just like with everything else that I've been showing you through today, it starts with highlighting the text that you want to change. So I'm going to highlight the sentence here. It doesn't matter that it's one of my bolded sentences. You can read any of your sentences that you want. And we're going to go look at right up here under the font section. There are these two different buttons here. Both of them have those two-part buttons where there's a button on the left and then there's the menu over on the right. And the first thing that we're going to do, actually, if I put my mouse over this one, you can see it says it's text highlight color. And so what this does is this works like a highlighter does. If you ever used a highlighter on like physical paper, what it'll do is it'll put a band of color over the text. So in some ways it allows you to do a background color for the text, but what you're doing is you're actually highlighting that text with a color. And by default, you can see the selection is yellow because most highlighters are yellow, but we have a lot of different color highlighters right now, and sometimes it's fun to play with more than just yellow. So if I click the little downward pointing triangle over on the right, you'll see actually I got a variety of different colors on here, and I can actually then choose the color that I want. As you can see, as I move my mouse over it, it will, you can actually see down here the color of the highlight on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this green because this green, actually we're going to choose the pink because the pink is a nice vibrant color. It kind of really pops out. So I'm going to click pink, and now I've done a pink background behind this line. So if I click somewhere else, this is now highlighted, and it kind of makes it stand out from the rest of the black and white that's on my document here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the line under it, and let's highlight this one a different color. I'm going to make this one green. And there we go. So now you can see I have my two different kind of highlights on there. So then the other button that I was talking about is the text color. So I'm going to highlight this. And so this button here to the right, put my mouse over it, it says font color. And this is actually the color. So right now the font color that we have here is black, but this can be a lot of different colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this one red. We're going to make this font red. And you can see now I've made it colored red. Now, as I mentioned, these are two-part buttons. So once I've chosen a color, instead of having to go and select a color, go into the selection here, I could just click the left part of the button and it'll choose whatever the last color that I selected was. So if I wanted to make a bunch of things red, I just need to click that and it makes them all red. So that is how you choose the highlighting and the color of your text. It's pretty straightforward. It just you choose the text that you want to do, and then you use the left part of the button if you just want to use the default or what's already set there. So you can see this is set to be this bright green color, or you can use the drop down and choose a different color if you want to. So for the next exercise that we're going to do is I'm going to come down to the bottom of my document and I'm going to click down into this empty space. And you can see now if I click down here, my cursor is now sitting on this line here. There's nothing blank there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find something on the internet that I'm going to copy and paste into my Microsoft Word document here. The easiest place that I like to go for this year is I like to go to wikipedia.org. And I am going to search for polar bear, because I like polar bears. I like polar bears, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a paragraph of text here. We're going to just choose this paragraph of text. I'm just going to select. So just like I selected and highlighted things in Microsoft Word, I can select and highlight things in Firefox, in my web browser. And I can come up to my edit menu and I can choose copy. So now this is sitting on the clipboard. Remember I was talking to you about the clipboard at the beginning of the class when we first did the copy exercise. This is now sitting on Windows' clipboard. So when I go back to Microsoft Word and I click paste, it will drop it into place there. So here's that paragraph that I've taken and I've now copied it from Wikipedia on the World Wide Web into my Word document here. So now that it's here, I can then do everything that I've been doing to the text that I wrote. I can make sections of it bold. I can make sections of it highlighted. I can make sections of it a different color. So I can do all of those different things. I can make it right justified. I can make it left justified. I can make it center justified. I can do everything I do with my other text that I have written already in Microsoft Word. So that's basically you can. So that's one of the things that you can always do with Microsoft Word is if you find something on the internet that you say you want to print it out, but it doesn't print out very well. Like it's when you try to print it, it either misses text or it gets cut off or it just doesn't show properly. If it's text, you can copy it, paste it in Microsoft Word, and then you get a little bit more control over how it looks and how it will print. If what you're trying to get is the content, if you're trying to get what those words are saying, you can put it into Microsoft Word and have a bit more control over how it works. The final thing that I want to show you, because we pasted, we have this whole paragraph in here now. We can also look at things like line spacing. Now, a lot of people, when they're working with things in Microsoft Word, they have to do things. They have to make, like if you're doing like a paper for a class or a report, you may have to double space your text. Everything we've been working with here so far has been single spaced, but we can also double space things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight my text, just like again, everything you want to do in Word, highlight your text first to select what you're specifically going to be affecting. I'm going to come up here to my ribbon, and right in the paragraph, right in the middle of the paragraph section here is this little icon that has like these arrows pointing up and down. Has this little downward pointing arrow next to it, which tells us that it's a menu. So when I click on it, I get a menu, and I'm able to choose how much space is between the lines. Now, by default, they tend to be 1 or 1.15. So this is actually 1 because you can see it actually looks about the same as the 1. But I can go up and I can do a double space. If I choose 2, that means that there isn't there. If I choose this, that means that the space in between here is about the same height as my line of text here. So it's kind of everything's double spaced. It's almost as if I got to the end of the line and I hit enter twice to kind of create a blank space in there. But I didn't have to do that. Word was able to do all of that automatically. So that's how you change. And then if I wanted to, if I can actually remember I was telling you we can undo. I can undo my line spacing and go back to my original, or I could redo. Or I can go in and I can make the spacing say 3 times, and it's even wider now if I wanted to have more space. And where this is useful is if you're writing, say, like you're writing a draft, and you want somebody to be able to make edits. So you print it out, you give it them to make edits. If you make your text double spaced or triple spaced in this way, it gives them space to actually like write things between the lines, so they can write in their changes or the comments closer to the text. Instead of having it off on the sides and having to draw arrows, which end up getting confusing, may not really make it very clear. So it's very useful for like a draft process. And then what happens is that when you're done with the draft, when you have everything finalized, you can select everything. Like we have things selected here, and you can just put it back to like single spacing so that when it prints out, it's just a single space. So you can change between the spacing as you need to. So this has been Microsoft Word. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes. Go back and what we're going to do is on the exercise here, we're looking at the last set of exercises. Play around with changing the color and highlights of a couple of the sentences. Go find text. I have instructions here. You can go to wikipedia.org, search for a topic, highlight the introduction text, and then use Control C or Edit Copy to copy it, and then paste it into your Word document at the bottom. And then in there, highlight the paragraph that you just did, and play around with the line changes using the line change feature right here on the ribbon. So take about 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, and do that. If you have any questions, this is a good time to ask it, and then we'll wrap up this class, and we'll be done for the day. I do have a link to a feedback survey here at projectoutcome.org/responses/54992. This link is also available on the Online Tech Pages website. Under Microsoft Word, there's a link here for evaluation survey, and that will, if this was refreshed properly, this should take us to the right survey, and then you're able to fill it out there. So I would appreciate if you went and filled out the survey here. If you've enjoyed taking this class, and I do hope that you join me next week for Intermediate Word. I will hang around for a few more minutes to see if there's any questions in the chat. And with that, I hope you have a really good afternoon, and I hope to see you next week. And the last thing that I want to kind of go over, I just realized I always kind of forget about this here, or I don't really always forget about it, but I did forget about it today, is if you look at the end of the handout, there's a section down here called Further Study and Practice. So if you wanted to continue working on or practicing what we covered in this class, the library does provide access to Udemy, which is an online learning site that offers video lessons and video learning. And I've highlighted there's a Learn Microsoft Word 2016 for Beginners, Basic to Advanced. And just like I explained at the beginning of the class, this would actually work for if you're using Microsoft Word 2010 over to like Microsoft Word 2019. So, and kind of all the variations in between. The beginnings, it's very, a lot of the stuff is very much the same. What you want to do is you want to follow this link here, this infotrack.gale.com, that address there, and you'll be asked to sign in with your library card number. So you'll sign in with your library card number, and then you'll need to create like a Google or Microsoft account in order to be able to actually use the site. So you'll create your Google or Microsoft account, and then you can search for this lesson here, and there's a whole set of video lessons you could learn just specifically what you wanted to learn, or you could go through the whole class on there. So with that, and I just realized you're not seeing what I'm looking at. So here we go. On the handout, there's the Further Study and Practice right here. Let me zoom in so we can actually look at it a little bit easier. There we go. You'll want to go to this address here and enter in your library card number, and then you'll have to sign in with a Google or Microsoft account. So with that, here's the survey link again. I do hope that you complete the survey, and I hope you had a good time with this class. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to hang around for another couple of minutes, and then we'll call it a day. And I hope to see you next week. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions in either chats. I hope you enjoyed today, and with that, I'm going to bid you adieu and hope to see you next week for Intermediate Word. Same channel here at fergusonlibrary.org from 2 to 4 on Thursday, February, today's the 4th, 11th. So with that, good night and have a good afternoon.